if your business just survived a natural disaster, you may be looking desperately for some sort of financial lifeline to keep you afloat after the disaster just occurred. And if that is you, this is going to be a great video for you because we're going to be going over the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program provided by the SBA, which is an incredible program that has helped so many businesses get back to baseline after a natural disaster occurred. Right? So in this video, we're going to be covering a couple of very key things. We're going to go over the EIDL program itself, what it is and what it isn't. We're also going to be going over who qualifies for this program. Then we're going to go over what you can use the funds from this program for. And lastly, we're going to go over why it's better than other loans or financial vehicles to help you get back to baseline after a natural disaster. So without further ado, I'm not going to waste your time. Let's keep getting things going, the show on the road. So we're going to start with what it is. EIDL stands for, as you can see here, Economic Injury and Disaster Loan. So this is different from a physical damage loan, right? So the SBA has two different loan programs following a disaster. You have this EIDL program, and you also have the physical damage loan as well. And this is actually something that homeowners can apply for as well. So if you're a homeowner listening to this and your home was damaged from a hurricane or a tornado, fire, flood, whatever, you can also go to the SBA and be like, hey, I need a loan to help me, repair my house. So that's something that not just business owners can apply for, but also homeowners. We're not going to cover that in this video. We're just going to specifically look at the Economic Injury and Disaster Loan. So if we look at what this program is not, it is not related to COVID. Right? So there was a COVID EIDL that existed. Now, the EIDL program itself has been around since about the 50s or the 60s. It hasn't been very super well known. It's not well advertised, but it's been around for a very long time. The COVID EIDL was a very specific EIDL to COVID, right? And so a lot of the restrictions and walls that are typically put up by the SBA to, at least to qualify businesses who need funds, a lot of those were taken away during COVID because it was just so hectic and sudden. Nobody really knew what to do, and businesses were shutting down left and right as a result. Plus, there was the national shutdown. Even if you were in a state like Florida where it was shut down for like 2 months, or in California where it was shut down for like 2 years, right? It didn't matter. Everything was shut down. People didn't know what to do. They're freaking out. So the SBA was like, you know what? We're going to remove a lot of the restrictions, get money out. So that was what the COVID EIDL was. Very different from this one. Same structure, very different. Now, this also is not free money, right? I mean, it's in the name loan, right? So you're ultimately going to have to pay this money back. And it's not something that necessarily can be forgiven in the majority of cases. So this isn't like some sort of like PPP program all over again where you could get a loan from a bank and then have it forgiven by the government. No, this is directly with the SBA. So there's no other bank involved in this conversation. But it is also not available to everybody. Right? So if you are not a registered business entity, and we'll go over who qualifies, but if you're not a registered business entity, this isn't going to be available to you. So this isn't something that and it's not like any business can get this either, right? You have to have been in a disaster, and you had to have been impacted by that disaster. So this isn't something where a business could come in and try to take advantage of the terms of this loan, which are very, very, gracious and beneficial. This isn't something where any business could come in and use it, right? It's very specific use case. This is, however, let's get some green on here. This is available for businesses in disaster areas, and it helps you get back to baseline. So it's very, very important we really drill that home. This loan is for businesses impacted by natural disasters who have been impacted financially and need help getting back to baseline financially. That's what this is. And in order to do that, this loan is very, very beneficial to businesses. If we look at the terms here, 4%. Enough said. That's the best money you're going to find anywhere, right? Because if you were to go to a bank, and we'll talk about this a little more later, you're looking at prime minimum, and they still have to add at least half a point there. Prime's like 7.5%. 4% is going to be the best thing you find anywhere. So it's 4%, very, very beneficial to businesses, up to 30-year term. So what this means is not only does it take a long time, or you have a long time to pay it off, but it's very small monthly payments, which is very digestible and very helpful for businesses who have just been impacted by a natural disaster. Then, lastly, first year's deferred, right? So you're going through a disaster, If you were to go through a lot of other different programs, they might nickel and dime you and try to start calling you like a month in, be like, hey, time to send your first payment. Not this one, right? The SBA is not going to nickel and dime you and try to call you within a month of the disaster and you getting this money. Your first year is deferred, right? So you don't have to make any payments in that first year. You have to start at the end of that first year. And you can make payments throughout that first year, but you don't have to. It is deferred. So very, very beneficial to businesses. So that's what it is and what it isn't. So now let's look at who qualifies for this program, right? So you must be, as I said earlier, a registered legal entity. You must be registered with the state. I don't care which state you register with, it has to be registered with the state. So it can't be, you're mowing lawns on the weekends for some extra cash, or maybe you're getting paid by, Uber Eats on the side and it's being paid to your personal account, or none of that, right? So you have to be a legal registered entity in order to be able to participate in this program. Next, you must have suffered economic injury, right? And so with economic injury, that can look like a couple different things. These are just a few examples. So if you had a loss of revenue, right? And this is kind of like, the SBA is a little tiptoey around this one, because you can't really always predict what revenue is going to be in a specific area. But if it's historically, you're making like, let's say $50,000 a month, right? And then a disaster hits, and all of a sudden we're historically in that month over the past 3 to 5 years, you have made $50,000 a month. You've now made $5,000 that month. Okay, yeah, it's pretty good indicator that something has happened, right? That's not going to be the only thing, but it's a pretty good indicator that something's happened. The next thing would be a supply chain disruption, right? So let's say you have a storefront that sells shoes. I don't know, this is an example. And your supplier that helps to get the shoes from your warehouses to your store, gone, right? Maybe the whole supply chain thing just crumbled. Their whole business, their warehouses were flooded, whatever, lost inventory, their trucks, whatever happened. So now you're not able to sell your product. Yeah, it's a pretty big indicator that there was a financial damage to your business due to a disaster. And then lastly here, as an example, loss of inventory. Kind of going back to that warehouse example, if you had a warehouse full of product and it flooded and it's gone, now you got to replace it. It's a pretty heavy price tag. We see a lot of restaurants, especially that work with us, a lot of restaurants who will lose all the food, right? And they have to replace all the food that they lost because of a disaster, because maybe it was either carried away by a flood, or now there was mold because the roof caved in and all moisture accumulated. These are a couple examples of what could be considered economic injury that could help your case in applying for an EIDL. Right? And so next, big one, you must be in a disaster zone. Kind of on the nose there, but you must be in a federally declared disaster zone. And so what I mean by federally declared disaster zone, it's not enough for a state governor to say there's a state of emergency in this area because of a disaster, right? That's a good indicator that there will be a declaration, very good indicator, pretty much almost all the time. But there has to be a federal declaration by the SBA, Small Business Administration, for this disaster. Sometimes it takes a day. I've seen some of them take up to a month for a federal declaration. So it really is up to them as to whether or not there is a declaration in your area. And you can find out if you're in a federally declared disaster zone by going to this website, lending.sba.gov. There's a button on there that says disaster assistance. You just click that and you type in the state. And that's an important thing. So it's going to be state and county. So they do all of their declarations based off of counties, right? So it's not enough to just be in the state of Florida, for example. You have to be in, if we're looking at past hurricanes, right, with like Milton, Helene, you have to have been in Lee County or Charlotte County. You couldn't have been in Miami-Dade County because it wasn't hit by a hurricane. So it didn't matter if your business was in Miami-Dade. It's not going to help you. If you were in Lee County, cool, it's going to help you. So that's a big indicator there. And then who qualifies? It's also important to note that it's not just available for-profit companies, it's also available for nonprofit companies. And if we look back at the interest rates earlier, 4%, right? 4% is for-profit companies. Nonprofit companies, you're looking at about 2.75% from the last time I checked. Still, incredible terms. So that's how, who qualifies for this program. Now let's go even further. What can you use this for? Very simple. You can use it for working capital, right? So you can use it for working capital like payroll. If you have people on your payroll and you need to still pay them to continue to do their job, you can use it for that. You can also use it to go towards any sort of rent you may have if you have a physical location. You can also use it to pay off your vendors if you still need to pay your vendors for your services. And something I didn't write down here earlier, but is still applicable, is pre-existing, oh, not a D, we need a G in there, pre-existing debts and loans, right? Now, caveat here, big caveat, I'll write that in red, you have to be current, right? So if you had pre-existing debts and loans or accrued, right? So let's write that too. If any accrued debts or loans, just assume that says accrued debts and loans, you can use this to help pay those off, right? However, if you were not current with the loans that you had prior to the disaster, you cannot use these funds for that, right? So if you were, let's say, paying off a bank business loan, and you were 2 months behind, right? This is prior to the disaster. You cannot use these funds to pay off that loan or to catch up on that loan. You can only use it on things you're current with. So, oh, my face is in the way. You have to be current, right? And so now when we're looking at expansion and upgrades for the EIDL, big X. So the biggest thing, remember, as we said earlier, this is to help you get back to baseline. This is not for you to expand. This is not for you to upgrade. This is not for you to scale. You know, this is for you to replace, replenish, and continue moving forward to overall recover. So that's what this is for. That's what you can use those funds for. And then why it's better than just about every other alternative out there, right? So we look at this, competitive interest rates, right? I kind of mentioned it earlier, but banks usually operate at about prime plus, right? Prime plus whatever they want to add. So prime, as of now, is 7.5%. And then banks will typically add on about like 3. That's usually, at least what I've seen. So if you have prime plus 3, you're looking at 10.5% interest rate, which is a little bit bigger than 4%. And I'm in the way again. A little bit bigger than 4%. So that's kind of impressive. And then especially when we're looking at the first year deferred, you don't have to make these payments immediately. You have an entire year to be able to pay these off, right? And I kind of skipped over long terms here, but the long term, up to 30 years, right? So you'll see a lot of like bridge programs, right? So an example is the Florida Bridge Program, or Florida Bridge Loan. The term for this loan is 1 year. So this is a 1-year loan. And it can be hard to pay things back in a year. It can be really hard, especially if you've lost your entire inventory. You lost your storefront. You lost everything. It's very hard to get back in a year, but it's very easy, or easier, not 30 plus, up to 30 years, right? Like we said earlier, it's a lot easier to do 30 years than it is 1 year. And then there's also a big thing here. I'm gonna keep it on green actually. Possible no personal guarantee, right? So there's a possible no personal guarantee. With a lot of loans, you do need to provide some sort of personal financial statement or personal guarantee that you're good for the money, right? With this one, there's a possibility of no personal guarantee if under a certain amount. This is typically under the amount of like 25 grand, right? So if you're looking for a loan under like 25 grand, typically you're gonna be fine. You don't need to offer a personal financial statement. I would still recommend you put one together just in case, right? You never know. Maybe there's some sort of specific thing in your application. You're like, you know what? Actually, we do need a personal financial statement. Go ahead, get that ready, get it done. It's just good practice. But yeah, so that's why this is better than just about every other alternative out there. Way better interest rate, way longer term, so it means lower monthly payments, and there's no prepayment penalties. Your first year is deferred. And there's a possible no personal guarantee on this loan as well, as long as it is low enough, right? So that is the EIDL in a nutshell, and it's an incredible resource for businesses who have just gone through a disaster. Now, I will say, working with the SBA is tough as a consensus. We have seen multiple business owners tell us that in the past they have done it themselves, because you can go through this yourself, and it's taken them about 8 or 9 months to do the entire process, which is a long time. And when you're looking at a disaster, I mean, you're only really looking at about 6 months of livelihood left before you have to close your doors. So 8 to 9 months really isn't always an option. The reason why that is because it's very confusing as to like which documents they'll need at which time. They don't necessarily ask for everything up front. They kind of do it in batches. So that's annoying. And then there's also the communication aspect, right? So if you're communicating with the SBA and you miss one correspondence, and you don't answer within their time frame, not yours, theirs, they will deny your entire application and you have to start all the way over from the beginning. But luckily, I have a solution for you. What do you know? Who would have thunk? If you want to go to economicrecoverycenter.com, that is our company. We help businesses just like you navigate different government financing programs in order to help them keep their doors open after a disaster. Because check this out. 1 out of every 10 businesses in the US will get hit by a natural disaster every year. Of those businesses that are hit, 40% will never reopen again. Of the ones that do open, 25% of those will close within 2 years. So when you're looking at after a disaster, I mean, really, you're looking at a 50-50 shot of success if you were to go it alone. And the reason for this 50-50 shot of success is lack of capital. So if somebody had a solution for you that helped you remove this right here, increase the odds of your 50-50, nothing in this world is 100% guaranteed, but increase the odds of the 50-50, maybe it goes up to 90-10, you'd want to take a look at that opportunity and see, is this something that makes sense for me? Well, here it is. www.economicrecoverycenter.com. You can book a free discovery call with one of the members on our team. We'll go through the process with you. We'll kind of analyze your situation. We'll see if it makes sense. Because at the end of the day, we're not going to do something if we don't think it's going to be of actual benefit to you. The last thing we want to do is put you in a worse position than before. So, again, www.economicrecoverycenter.com. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all the stuff all the other YouTubers say in these videos. But if you found this helpful, please let us know in the comments below. If there's anything that you were confused about, we didn't really cover that well, or if you want further clarification on something, feel free, drop the comments below and the questions below. I am more than happy to create as many of these videos as you need in order for you to fully understand what this program can do for you and your business. And until next time, hope you take care. We're just going to leave it at that. Have a good one.